Bayonetta. Women, weapons, weaves. That's basically the 10 Commandments. I guess I'm a Christian now. The first game came out and blew literally everyone's whole skin off, leaving an absolute boneyard of standing skeletons, mouths agape in awe. Finally, a female protag with confidence, poise, style, someone who owns her femininity and weaponizes it to her own ends. And none of that super Princess Peach hyper-emotion crap. Are you kidding me with this? Dubbed by Platinum Games and directed by Hideki Kamiya, post-Viewtiful Joe and pre-Wonderful 101, Bayonetta represents a crystallization of his contemporary design sensibilities, tempered by his team. He collaborated with artist Mari Shimazaki to capture a sexy and fashionable protag to compete with Devil May Cry. I don't think Bayonetta would have gotten off the ground without it. She's serving cunt. The series is set squarely in the lineage of other great 3D character action games, so it's a lot to walk into. They're fast, reactive, free-flowing, weird to learn, even with action game experience. At least it's original. Or is it? Before getting into the meat, it's worth acknowledging that no matter how much fan buzz you see, how many people love these games to death, the sales aren't really there. Bayonetta's a niche franchise at best, and it tends to warp conversation a bit. You're either talking with one of the rare Bayo buyers, or, more dangerously, a Bayo expert. An estimated 50% of interactions with hardcore Bayo fans end in violence, with most victims being shot, killed, and schmooved on post-mortem. Don't be a statistic. This is my look at the Bayonetta series. Take it away! Bayonetta's the kind of game I didn't immediately drool over. One, because she ain't real, bro. She ain't real. Two, because, I mean, she's not a guy with a 10-foot sword, but that's okay, new experiences, we're cool. If you walked in a skeptic, well, don't worry, you'll be converted in the first 20 minutes between the most absurd action protag intro I've ever seen.
Hey, come on now, that's phallic.
The blazing fast action, stylish 60 FPS combat, on the Switch version at least. The game's a feast, and it comes out of the gate flaming. Which is good, because the actual first-timer experience blows
I wish I were dead.
Not unlike Viewtiful Joe. I recommend first-timers take easy mode on to start. Bayonetta isn't overly difficult per se, depending on your familiarity with carpal tunnel games, but it can get overly frustrating and force players out. Oh, enemies you need to parry dodge to meaningfully damage? Oh, dudes that hit faster than I can react? Oh, instant death, quick time events that last a single second and punish you immediately on misinput. And to top that off, player deaths ravage your score, making it harder to unlock new moves, buy items, and generally get playing the game they signed up for. You know, in a lot of games, normal mode means the entry-level default difficulty. For Hideki Kamiya, normal mode is a skill check, like a book that's blurry until you know the ending. Have fun trying to read that shit, bro. It's really easy to get sitting there, brow furrowed like, oh, after that intro cutscene, I thought we'd be having fun. But I guess not. And the barrier to entry is literally just knowledge. Seeing and fighting all the enemies and segments once will prepare you for a clean run of normal mode. There's good, too. The levels are pretty and traversal is bare minimum interesting. Some of the sights and scenes are absolutely mind-bending in a way that other games in the genre could never compare to. And while that functionally results in weird obnoxious platforming for a new player, it's still a gorgeous game. I actually like Bayo 1, in some cases more than the other games, but the sales numbers and generally niche status are justified. The experience is full of incredible highs and dark, dank lows, absolutely cavernous lows, and that's expected. It's a Hideki Kamiya game. What's that, KBash? What are you talking about? Let's illustrate. It's a highly volatile, fast-paced action game with a fairly slow-moving protagonist, ignoring a few particular mobility options, and a decent amount of complexity. Sound familiar? You'll start a level, do a couple rounds of combat, then bam, you're carrying an object from point A to B, falling down a new pathway, completing a puzzle, changing perspective mid-level, and then you'll do some combats, and the experience levels out again. Maybe a couple of side objectives or treasure hunts, sure okay. And then you're thrust into a 7 actual minute motorcycle or other vehicle gunning segment. Totally baffled. Devil May Cry didn't do this stuff. Ninja Gaiden didn't didn't do this stuff, except when they did. But generally not as much as Bayo. Oh, and like Viewtiful Joe, you're getting ranked for each leg of a level. Kamiya has some pretty particular tastes, and I'm not going to call these diversions bad writ large. Some players really dig breaking up the action. And yeah, maybe action games shouldn't just be the combat system. Some players would get bored, right? So when Soul Calibur 5 came out, I raced home to the dorm room to jam matches, and I played the same character for 100 games straight. That's just who I am, and I'm not apologizing. My view is that Kamiya wants players playing his action games multiple times, judging by their short runtimes and complexity, and mastering the experience too, something clearly indicated by punishing players for doing badly, making players unlock their full skill set on the first run, designing multiple difficulties, ranking every step of a level, even including something as small and mean as the Stone Award for doing badly. The issue is simple. If everything about your game is demanding multiple runs, why is the combat, the main feature, not strong enough to stand on its own? It does in DMC-5, it does in Ninja Gaiden 2. Even Viewtiful Joe 1 is fairly light on diversions. Admittedly, this is a taste thing and doesn't harm the overall experience too much, but other kings of the action genre don't have this quirk. To be fair, DMC-4 came out a few years prior and had the gyro blade, so really, Bayo's not so far out of line. So let's talk fun. Second plays, combat, the meat. Like Viewtiful Joe, Bayo played twice is a beautiful kind of indication. Suddenly, everything clicks into place. The game is working. I'm having fun! Because the diversions are cut short in seconds. I'm not wondering how to finish a puzzle, and only the motorcycle and rocket ride segments really drag. Everything else is a handful of sand in the glass, and I love it. Combat is where Bayonetta shines brightest. I mean, forget sortie boys. My esteemed here has guns strapped to her feet. Try asking for picks. See what happens. You've got a jump, a dedicated gun button, punches and kicks at a baseline. Combat revolves around pushing damage into enemies, weaving between them with dodges, and staying active at all times, occasionally dumping magic meter for stronger attacks. There's no horrible punishment for getting hit, just risking death, a lower rank, or fewer combo points, all of which contribute to your ability to upgrade your character. So you want to keep competitive, but you don't have to top 8 to stay winning. Also, you can hit them with the tuba. Bayonetta's a little slow to start, and even though she can learn a flying kick move and a couple transformations, the flight-focused bird form and the grounded dash with a panther form, which like, women be cattin', your main method of keeping the fight, the combo, going at a distance is gunfire. It's literally built into your punches and kicks. Just hold an attack and let a stream of bullets rip. It's great. A lot of little techniques and special attacks smooth out play, notably the teleport that works in any form, but the axis combat spins on is witch time. Basically, you want to time your dodges right, which often means actively dodging into enemy attacks to slow down time and freestyle everyone to death. Basically, minis on a button. I appreciate the audacity. You're made to emulate your stylish, confident character in play to succeed. Which time is why I keep bringing up Viewtiful Joe. Devil May Cry doesn't ask the player to keep Devil Trigger up to do damage, just combo and dodge. Ninja Gaiden wants the player abusing invincibility frames or hard-to-punish attacks while mindfully guarding, rolling, and jumping. So it's similar, but pretty light on inputs in some. Bayonetta is just like Viewtiful Joe, but 3D. You dodge well and drop an insane punish on the enemy. I don't want to start tier listing action games here. V Joe, the first, is really fun and cozy after learning the ropes, and Bayo's no different. It's doing something unique in the hardcore 3D action game space, and it's worthy just for that. I will say, though, that I'm not sure Bayonetta's chief draw is its hardcore action heritage. Yes, it comes from the progenitor of DMC. Yes, it's building on a history as thick as my hair. But guys, Bayo is fabulous. This game is pure, unfiltered camp. It's incredible. Her animations, her outfit being made out of hair, her dancing. She's like a force of nature in frames. This protagonist carries her own game on her back like motherfucking Atlas himself. Dante never had to work that hard. Ryu Hayabusa never experienced personality. That guy is a stick, charisma-wise. She owns herself on screen so aggressively it puts overly Puritan cries of indecency to shame. If anything, she's positive for female rep, oozing pride and able to back it up. And if the boss battles are half the measure of an action game, I mean, very little about the bosses conveys serious action experience. A lot of them are gimmicky, introduce new rules to battles, or they test the player, but they're not framed like equals, the way many of DMC4's great boss fights are, and Ninja Gaiden's as well. Instead, they take up whole stages. In many ways, they're partially puzzles. They're weird, annoying, and unnecessary, the way several diversion segments are. They don't feel like proper intentional challenges to me. What if half the bosses in DMC4 were the giant angel? Would that be a better game? Most of them lack any personality beyond big douche angel. It's like Bayo herself is such a singularity of personality, she sucked it out of almost everything else. The exception is Jean, Bayo's kind of rival who hounds her throughout the game. These battles take a more methodical approach like Genshin or Virgil, so it's hard to outwardly criticize. I guess I appreciate that you can't just dance your rival to death. Speaking of Jean, the story's a little bit out there. Basically, the eponymous protagonist, Bayonetta, God, I love sounding smart and lying about it, has no memories, prances through the levels, killing angels and being attacked by Jean, which triggers flashbacks from her upbringing as an Umber witch, all while this greaseball Luca chases her for revenge, Bayonetta having allegedly killed his father at some point, and also a child who looks indistinguishable from our hero enters the plot as well, and Luca turns into a babysitter. Okay, I need a sec. I feel like if I stuck out my finger and ran it over the length of your nose, it'd be wet. No matter who's on screen, everyone takes a backseat to Bayo. This ain't like DMC4 where Trish and Nero can hold their own. Enzo's funny, Radon doesn't really do anything, Luke is fun, but he feels superfluous except for his role protecting the kid, and all of this culminates in Bayonetta's father, Baldur, whose fatherhood was born out of an ambition to acquire a pair of plot coupons and become a god or something, battling Bayonetta to determine the fate of the world. Look, I don't come to action games for the story, but it's worth noting how consistently Bayonetta presents a world of callous, greedy, morally bankrupt, and at best, selfish men, in direct opposition to a woman trying to find her place, talk her shit, and be herself, free from obligation and harassment. There's a palpably feminine power fantasy that even goes as far as incorporating maternal behavior and the virtue of motherhood, weirdly enough. I read a tweet about Bayonetta being a game where you can physically feel the tension between the artist's power fantasy and Kamiya's casual sexism, and I can't stop thinking about it. It keeps making sense. Before moving on, I want to establish that Bayonetta 1 was traditionally the series' gold standard game. Many people like 2. Some put them in the same tier even, but 1 is the more competent hardcore action game to a subset of fans. And after playing twice, I can see why. Distance creates perspective, and diving into the sequel made me realize that this entry alone captures the sharp, hard-hitting, persistent action Kamiya fans want. So what happened in 2? It's not that the sequel's bad. Maybe it's better. I don't know anymore. My body's 30% lead. Well, you know what they say, if you can't make it better, make it beautiful. Bayo 2 pops the tutorial cork off the hop, and performance issues aside, we are hyped to serve a heaping helping of husk. Everything kind of feels like tin covered in skin, if you feel, and I don't hate the sharp aesthetic. Frankly, I'm just doing voiceover commentary to ignore the story in general. I don't want to talk about it. Umbra witches, angels, devils, Baldur, forget about it! Bayo 2 gets points for starting on non-denominational holiday commonly understood as Christmas, laying the thread on thick and spinning that Moon River remix. It's kind of transcendental. This song remixed for Bayonetta. I'm feeling something. That may be appendicitis. I avoided mentioning the OST, but for once, in an action game, I think it not only enhances the gameplay, this in the first, but the character, the identity of the work, something I never strongly felt about the other action games I've played, at least not to this extent. Tracks out here, shrieking Bayonetta. One last thing in the intro, this Godzilla section ended up way more influential than I expected in the third game. Looking into it, Kamiya really likes kaiju. Sometimes the vision coalesces. You gotta appreciate a guy putting all the stuff they like in their work. Is it mass market appeal? No! Does it have an army of fans? Forget about it! No, seriously, it has a large amount of fans. Anyway, Bayonetta goes on a fabulous trip to rescue Jean's soul from hell, and Enzo unfortunately explodes. That's the setup. So the first game was beautiful in a very DMC4 way. Stark, slick architecture, these bizarre ancient settings in the modern era escalating into magical, even alien locales. Bayo 2 escalates as well, but gives the player more than hallways and hallways dressed up in clothes. At least once anyway, with so many fantastical, visually stunning zones. This city, man, what a cruel intro. People aren't gonna wanna leave level 1-1, bro. Think! And to the game's credit, there's a little more to do area by area than the original. There were always hidden verses in Bayo's levels, that is, combat sections nestled away from the beaten path, but the world itself feels more considered. And that makes sense. It's a second run at a prototype concept. Also, can we just talk about bonus stages? Every Bayo game has challenge missions to gain extra health or magic meter, etc. Very soul-crushing Japanese salaryman stuff here. Overwork or lose opportunities. Love to see it. But only Bayo 2 offers a consistent string of simple and doable challenges that actually reward players for finding and completing them. The other games reward the player, but I only found 2's to be consistently manageable and enjoyable right away. And what I'm getting at, between the more interesting world and the more tolerable challenge missions, is that Bayo 2 goes down smooth. Did you drink all that pineapple juice for me? Oh, you. More than any other game in the series, it catches a lot of flack, and particularly from fans of the first who don't like what the higher difficulties offer, but it's inarguably cleaner for newcomers. It feels like Nintendo acquired the thing, came into the office, saw like 8 plain sections queued up and said, no, don't do that, and here we are, polished to a shine. Like Kamyu sections, or Platinum sections I guess, Automata does these too. They're here, get used to it. You know, that's inescapable. But they're not so bad. Except that one near the end that's 8 or 9 real-life minutes. Please, for the love of God, I'm trying to play an action game, please! Combat, though, that's the real story. Everything's streamlined slightly, and that extends to combat. Battles are simple. I played it immediately after my first run of Bayo 1, and couldn't believe how easy it was by comparison. I died multiple times in the original Bayo play, but 2 barely put up a fight. I think I may have died once or twice near the end. And it's gotta be the enemy design, because witch time is less useful. You get smaller burst windows out of any given witch time, and I can see the vision a little. Having the player schmoove on a time-frozen foe really is no different than beating a child. The other 3D action game masterclasses don't do slowed time. It's transgressive in the space. But it's also fundamental to Bayonetta. Curtailing its usefulness leads to weaker punishes, shorter combos, less freestyle opportunity, less Bayonetta. I won't get too technical, I'm not an expert. It just feels like good intentions potentially harming the experience. Maybe that's a stretch. Bayo 1's hardest difficulty cuts witch time out completely, and that's still Bayonetta, but 2 here limited the number of times you can use dodge offset in a combo, which kinda cringe, but this is normal mode, and none of that really matters. Because really, mix and match your weapons, or don't. You can mash attacks into almost anything, wait for the big sloppy counterattack, dodge, activate witch time, and keep going. Bayo 1 is interesting because while several enemies act faster than humans can react, I'm not kidding, that bite attack is less than 15 frames, you see it enough to predict the attack in the future. In 2, you don't need to see attacks more than a couple times to react to them. It's a wildly more forgiving experience, and hard to care about mechanically because of it. Like I'm fighting big idiot sandbags, and by the way, that makes it great for a newcomer. The original shunts people for fun, like as a hobby. It's just that normal mode here might as well be Dynasty Warriors with witch time. I weapon swapped the whole way through, trying out scores of colorful, interesting weapons. I even tried to incorporate dodge offset when I could, but everything rolled over the exact same way. Push damage in, dodge the enemy, start wailing. It's frustrating because I got to a point when the whole experience was turning into a soup in my head, where I thought, I don't need to play this twice. What is there to see? Yeah, I could become a tech schmaster and fight down multiple difficulties and make really nice footage, but nothing really piqued my interest the way 1 did. I think the draw to Bayonetta is the character, the distinct personality, that and the relative beauty of the combat system. You can absolutely perform eye-catching, masterwork combos. You can get a lot of likes on Twitter, but I have shit to do, so it's a harder sell than it might otherwise be. Game's still great for style, and playing through normal mode to chill out sounds nice. I forget what that feels like.
We are vibing. Hated that.
I had a hard time remembering the bosses at all, and looking back on them, I'm understanding a few things about Bayo boss design. I don't like most of the first game's bosses, but they're designed that way for a reason. Bayonetta's combat is similar enough to Viewtiful Joe, but that game was 2D. Most bosses are fought in large arenas with platforms, and you're made to weave through attacks, dodge, slow time, and punch. It's a simplified version of what Bayo does. Except Bayonetta is a 3D action game. I'm expecting crazy humanoid enemies with like skills, or at least ones I can interact with. Notably, DMC4s are mostly fully interactable, even if you can't raw dog combo all of them down. Not so in Bayonetta. You can't often fully combo a humanoid boss. They just move away, zero stun, and you get these puny witch time windows, so while you're dodging right, you're not getting to do your gameplay. And they barely make use of the Panther form either. And those big bosses, the platforming ones, all let you make use of Bayo's skills. Her witch time, her Panther mode, her combo game. Suddenly things click into place. Bayonetta could work with more regular-sized enemies, but they won't allow it, and unless they included a pile of weird platforming, they wouldn't use her full moveset to its fullest. So I guess they're fine. I just struggle to remember them. But this is Bayonetta. Camp, flash, color. Character matters most. This is a beautifully realized game with deeply artistic animations, some of the most interesting looking weapons in a video game, even if the beautiful iridescent scarab beetle bow is middling to bad. I'm offended, but I can appreciate the art. It's still an uplifting and elegant adventure, worth the time. And the story's actually really fun and sweet even. On the trip to save Jean, Bayo meets up with Luca, who takes on a much smaller role but assists at key moments, and this new kid Loki, who obviously supernatural and weird. The vibes are a little strained.
I just told you my name is... You'll earn your name when you become a man.
But it's not unbearable. Anyway, you banter along through a number of levels and eventually time itself, so Bayonetta can meet her mother and father pre-psychopathy. Again, she takes on a motherly role in the game towards Loki. Really seems to be a point of interest for the developer, and we even get a familial reconciliation that works better than I expected. I didn't feel anything playing through most of DMC, except for wow, this is really cool. Or the first Bayo game for that matter, but 2 works in strange ways. Look at this dude. This dude is a rhombus. It's a hard game to dislike. Moon River Remix kicking in, slamming the rhomboid into his horrible vor death. Even if it's not what a subset of fans wanted out of Bayonetta, it's still a worthwhile time. An iteration on greatness.
Bayo 3 time, baby!
I was skeptical, and yeah, we could take time going over a million little gamer gripes from frame dips to dithering, but too late, brother, I'm 1,000 old games deep, and I simply do not care! Bayonetta 3 is a lot, but let's clear up some questions. Does 3 build on 2? Yes. Does 3 try to keep hardcore fans looped in? I think so. Is 3 the campiest entry yet conceived? Without question. That makes it an instant Bayo classic by design. No matter what, you're getting that served on a plate. It's especially fun to go back after a first run, once you've got all the weapons and most of their moves, but that first play is choppier than the South China Sea. No, don't take my script away. It's hard with new games. You have to temper expectations, and the truth is, I've never really jived with Bayonetta like I did with DMC and Ninja Gaiden. That's just my lived reality. So when I, innocently sitting in my gamer chair, booted up Bayo 3 for the first time and was met with obnoxiously large enemies and insane camera issues I'd normally never complain about, and an OST that didn't speak to me, I thought, okay, fine. I'm probably just feeling the reviewer crunch. Cut to the 10th consecutive Bayonetta diversion segment trademark. That playthrough, from Godzilla grinds to spider climbs to Mamma Mia shooter segments to reducing Jean to a side-scrolling stealth minigame. I know you're out there saying, this is peak. This is what I desire. I'm really, really happy for you. It pleases me when you have fun. I wake up and drink a cup of black coffee and twice as much water every morning. In the summer I turned 21, I played Street Fighter 4 almost every single day after work. I have never purposely played the single-player mode of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with over 1,000 hours logged. I understand that people need shakeups and novelty and just Fun little drinks like boba. If you're anything like me, these segments stand out. But that's my fault for getting 3 games deep and not pulling out. Bayonetta has never been shy or compromising with these features, and I can respect the vision, at least. And despite the additions and expansions, gameplay feels fine. It seems like a direct statement from the devs. We get that people like 1, but 1 is 1, and this is not 1. At the same time, it loops hardcore fans in with slightly tighter witch time windows, higher difficulty than 2 in general, and a new pillar of combat in demon summoning. A whole new playable character that's both enjoyable to play and hard to master. Got my work cut out for me. Let's dig in. 3 introduces a multiverse concept into Bayonetta. Nothing totally unexpected. We were already dealing with time travel. Sure, okay. Otherwise, it's a perfectly average day in New York City. Though, a small critique, there isn't nearly enough human suffering on screen to be truly accurate. We're introduced to our new antagonist, the homunculi. Always a fairly nondescript, occasionally humanoid, but uncannily inhuman enemy, huh, Kamiya? What do you see in your dreams? You'll meet Viola early on, and the pair travels a diverging path with the ultimate goal of collecting bizarre timepieces and finding a doctor who knows how to deal with the homunculi to set the world right. Bayo 3 intro's pretty hard. You're put to work doing all the same stuff she's known for, styling combos, sick moves, really impressive set pieces contrasted by relatively dull interludes. Only, unlike the other games, stages have expanded massively. Side missions, collectibles, extra combat sections, but KBash, that doesn't sound new at all. And that's because it's not. It's just that the physical environments are a lot more expansive, so you've got more room to hang around if you like a big old playpen for Bayo babbies. And to the game's credit, Panther form and Crow form are gone. Whenever you dash, you'll transform into a unique demon related to your currently equipped weapon. Setting aside how cool that is, just conceptually, you'll also get a ton of weird extra platforming moves for each demon. None of them incredibly necessary, they're just cool. Good fun. The spider swings, the choo-choo train neumes. Oh, sorry, did I neglect to mention the train demon form? There's a train demon form! I know that's not a selling point for everybody, but let's make this crystal clear. Bayonetta 3 is the most video games Bayo game. Period. That doesn't make it the most competent or cleanly designed action game, but it is video games. I guess that's the dividing line. Is it enough to be just really fun and cool and neat, or should it also be extremely clean, tight, and curated? Bayonetta always felt like Kamiya refused to compromise on a vision, so yeah, I'll take my train.
Hey, Kamiya. Why is Jean a centipede?
Setting aside the immediate charm, the novelty of fantastical weapons and forms, the extravagant animation our protag gets, it's all pretty off the rails, huh? Sure, we're doing 1 to 3 combat sequences between any given Platinum Games, Brain Bleach, Ooga Booga fandom fiesta, but they're coming. The Godzilla surfing sequences are coming to break down your door. The straight-up kaiju battles are there, and they linger like a stench. I can't believe how much Kamiya core trash I'm forced to sit through. You know what this is when I'm doing a video game review and throwing a joke that derails things, or fart reverb sound effect, or that one explosion sound I always pull out. Glass houses, huh? The trouble is, this game flow keeps up until the very end. Not only the silly side stuff, stealth missions, Viola missions, no offense, and we'll get there, but even Bayo acquiring new weapons and being made to platform and puzzle her way through individual levels with newly acquired demon powers, all the way to the end. Jesus Christ, Bayonetta took the lifelong learner shit seriously. So while you're in the brain blender trying to make sense of all this stuff, you're realizing that combat's basically the same, but pretty schmixed too. Most options are familiar, but you've lost Wicked Weaves, the old magic meter dump skill, because demons have taken over. Most of your damage is tied up in accessing demon form moves, so combo finishers not unlike Wicked Weaves, and actual factual demon summoning. Now you can hold a button and input demon slave attacks, so kaiju battling mid-hardcore action game, which might sound bad, or intrusive, or annoying at first, and I can admit, like the gigantic enemies, sometimes they take up too much screen space and affect visibility, but they're fantastically varied and individually useful too. I have train, get out the way! You don't have to commit to huge amounts of time controlling demons mid-fight. You can just input one attack to extend a combo. Shoot, the Umbran Clock Tower summon, which Clock Tower, man. Peak video games. Lets you get into the mech from 2 and whack dudes. Early reviews called 3 a celebration of the series. Justifiably so. Now I know what you're thinking. Get me the off Kamiya's wild ride, please! But it gets so much better on second pass. The second time you run through the game, you'll know which weapons you like, you'll have their movesets unlocked, and you'll be popping off crazy combos and working in demon slave tricks. The weird shooter sections and other junk will fly by because they don't matter, and they're over quick enough. You'll know where to go and won't need to spend tons of time dirtling in the environments hunting for secrets and power-ups. Bayonetta as a franchise might include these little segments, but going back has only ever felt rewarding. The game even accounts for the specific demon puzzle segments by auto-equipping those demons when you walk into the room. No menus required. If you hate genre segments, you can skip over them. You'll unlock customization options and colors, and it just feels a whole lot better. Just like 1, finishing the game once warps the experience forever after, and it's perfectly competent. The other addition I've avoided so far is Viola. She's important to 3 for more than a few reasons, and acts functionally like DMC4's Nero, only always endearing and enjoyable on screen instead of just sometimes. Oh, deep burn. I can't help it. I don't know how people get pissy about her. Viola's real uptight and tryhardian and Genki Shoujo desk, but I appreciate the energy, especially in a game full of unshakably confident personalities and like Enzo. Viola's segments are thinner Bayonetta levels, less fluff, fewer puzzles, mostly action. Her gameplay is similar, just highly cropped. She has a single weapon, mostly all the same buttons, a single summonable demon, charge attacks, that's new. Oh, and her witch time is tied to a very strict sword parry. She keeps the dodge move Bayo has, but doesn't get any witch time for it. This puts her in a weird place where she isn't a beginner character. She's got fewer options and her defensive play is worse. Yes, she can guard and Bayo can't, but witch time isn't super hard to pull off and makes the default experience much smoother and more enjoyable, unfortunately. Many Viola sections really push the player to the limit to master the tight parry window or die. It's frustrating but playable. What's fascinating is thinking back on Bayonetta 1's hardest difficulty, removing witch time entirely, forcing the player to dodge and master dodge offset. I imagine Viola feels just fine for those players with her fast attacks, charge utility, swift and deliberate ranged option. I don't know, I think I'd rather be on the right side of history at this point. And surprisingly, Viola doesn't appear very often, with 3 mandatory levels and a boss fight at the end. Her vibe is easily the freshest thing in the game, but she spends most of her time hunting down and babysitting Luca. I know. KBash, that's China on screen. What is happening? Well, you see, in the Bayo-verse, each universe, or country in this case, but okay, is watched over by a different Bayonetta, hence Chinese Bayonetta, French Bayonetta, Egyptian Bayonetta. Guys, is Canadian Bayonetta too much to ask for?
Alright, fuck off, you fucking hoser. I'll flatten you like the end of a beaver, bud.
Anyhow, Bayo 3 is a new game, and spoiling things would be in poor taste, so let's talk vague generals. Critics found the story disappointing, but often note that the story isn't really the draw for the games. I agree, but I still believe 2 worked in a surprising way that 3 ultimately sidled up to, even if their poses didn't quite match. Bayo 3 pushes the motherhood conceit to its logical conclusion. I kind of felt insane saying that in the first game with the plot revolving around the kid, but watching it evolve in 2, I knew they were up to something, so yeah, I can say that the story of Bayonetta is concerned with motherhood, family, and passing the torch, preparing another generation. I'm confused about the protagonists existing as some kind of universal archetypal beings. Whole thing kind of smacks at DMC5 deliberately wanting to move away from the Sons of Sparta, though it's totally unclear if we'll see another Bayonetta game at all. I think it hits hard on its own. Final entry or not, it's been a wild ride. If anything, Bayo 3 makes it clear what the series wants to be: a campy, dramatic roller coaster with wildly jagged edges and incredible shine. It's the first one to truly make the player a witch, palpably leaning into the magic, demons, transformations. Its pull overpowers the bumps. It's extremely easy to call any of the games poorly thought out or built like a 6 out of 10 or something else about the generally uneven progression, but what it represents as a game, from its character to its elegant play to the bleeding heart it absolutely emanates, Bayonetta's the kind of genius you can't codify. I need a conclusion. I'm gonna dance about it. Hey, it's KBash. Huge thanks goes out to my $4 patrons. Check them out. Beautiful. And double special thanks goes to my extra generous patrons who are Adam Welch,
Acropolin,
Alex, Alpha 42,
Arch,
Azura,
Axin8,
Azuis, Bear Skeleton,
Basement Dweller,
Bearkeeper,
BZ Soul,
Ben M, Bing Bing Doodoo Boingo Boingo time!
Blake against the machine.
Boha.
Boom Dead.
Brios.
Brianna Wu.
British Gooch.
Cow.
Can I cuss on
Captain
here?
Blasty.
Captain Wade.
C-Dub.
Caesar T.
Chiefy Boy.
Cordon.
Chris Bromo.
Cody Golden.
Couch Moba.
Corgi the Lad.
Crater.
Chrono 19D.
CW
Glassworks.
Glassworks.
Cynical.
Daddy Dagon.
Dondium. Danny Lavelle.
Denny Pangos.
Dakota Storm
Decky
Jones.
Steak. Swaggy
David
Bag.
Castillo.
Dara.
Dakota.
Dead.
Dennis Amaya.
Diablo.
Dingus Bat.
Doug Prince.
Dr. Cullen PhD.
DSChabano.com.
Dylan Coffee.
8-Bit
Elias.
Elpio.
Elsa.
Emperor Pickle.
Eric Monticello.
Aesthetico.
Everstone Isle.
Exa.
Gnar.
Fupa Saiyan.
Frankenstitch.
Frisky Nippler.
Glitchseeker.
Nine Cat.
Goose 6112.
Gray, the darkest black.
Gargory. Gucci Plant.
Asi Ibrahim Tanirga.
Hatsune Miku's Crack House.
Archive.
Beeman. Game and Station.
X-Mex.
Horn Tiger.
Huey.
I'm supporting KBash just because I wanted to make this part of the video longer.
Ingenious Clown.
I punched a sandwich.
Irrational. Irradiated Cherries.
Dice Kyle.
It's
not bad.
It's time to sue.
It's not good.
Ivy Ruth Langley.
Jacob.
James. Jason Lasky.
Jaden.
Jadeus.
KK Hedgehog.
John
Bo the Joker.
Joke Frog.
Jordan
Joyner.
Julian My Julian.
Keegan Too Cool.
Kata Snap.
King Kuma.
Clock
Crated. Crazy Dark Chocolate.
Kumi.
Heist.
Kyle. KZ Excellent.
Lady Dentalion.
Lady Weed.
Latrix.
Laundry Mom.
Lego Sid.
Lethal Nibbles.
Little Big Trouble.
Loathsome Dung Eater.
Low Fat Mogul.
Lucas Boy.
Lucky McSmucky.
Mac James.
Magical Madman.
Mara Ganger.
Marcules.
Marsmugio.
Maximilian Wolfgang
Mike
Niver.
DeVere.
Milky Moo Official. Monochrome Only.
Modi.
Mr. Dodongo.
Mr. Whiskey 282.
Mr. Yeety Dabface McYoinkbomb.
Nyrenew. Nito Torpedo.
Nico Puzzle Rat.
Dorian Daridius.
Not Nobel.
Nuggy.
Old Burgle.
Old Man Cranberry.
Omni Nerd Zero.
Only LK.
The Plant.
Pandemic Cowboy.
Pinata.
PK Gaming.
Pontus Reddin.
Popular Hitman.
Potato Gaming HD.
Prismatic Dan.
Fractal and Pals.
Quasar McDougal.
Quillworth.
Quinn.
Reasonable Willow.
Reggie Rodriguez.
Renteca Bond.
Ricochet
Framed
Frame.
Relay.
Roy Londo.
Ryan Maury Brooks.
Siren Smells Good.
Salty Smasher.
Scribe Slendy.
Sakai no Award.
Shot.
Shinigami.
Silver Bear 909.
Sing
God.
Sleepy Wabbit.
Sock'em Boppers.
Suckdolager.
Space Lizard.
Spooky Grimalkin.
Squidget.
Squishword.
Star Night Sky.
Streetums.
Sublime Cataclysm.
Super
Sandwich Guy.
Harvold's Quest.
George Shubbington.
The Big Bubby.
The Clown Prince of
The
Cringe.
Digital Dutchman. The good Lord has blessed me.
The
Hallelujah.
Green Loki.
The Peacemaker Pyro.
The Salt Knight.
Dick Mystic.
Thrips Heart
Tiggles McGuffin.
Timid the Writer.
Total Play.
Travis Edwards.
Twiddle.
Chungus.
Ty Guy 9001.
Vid.
Valenrist.
Venom.
Vice Puck.
Viewers Like You.
Vic. Waposa.
Weed Trash.
Waylon.
Where am I? Help.
Widgie.
Winter Solstice.
Win TV.
Zanny Tanner.
Yashichi.
Yate Kundo.
Your mom. Winky
Zachary Livesey.
Zachary V.
Zanasso.
Zane the Impure.
Zane the Pure.
Zed Slayer Gamer.
Zero Salazar.
Sylvan Ray.
Z-Nova.
Cyberbunk. If you'd like to help support the show, unlock new long-form projects, and help me keep improving, check out my Patreon. We got lots more videos in store. Stay tuned for more. KBash out.